Bhagavato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Samma Sambuddhassa Sars. So this sutta is a very simple sutta, but it has a very deep meaning. And the meaning of the sutta is that how does the state of arahanthood kind of arise and what it requires. So it is giving us the kind of the simplest explanation of dependent origination. Dependent origination is important because we know that certain things are related to certain actions are related to certain results. So that is the dependent origination. So we go through this sutta. It is Samyutta Nikaya 12.38. And we have shared the document. You can so you can read along with me. At Savatthi, students, what one intends and what one plans, and whatever one has a tendency towards, this becomes a basis for the maintenance of consciousness. So the Buddha is saying what one intends and what one plans. That means that whenever you want to do something, you will say that I think I have an idea that I will go to a movie, or I think I have an idea, let us kind of have something to eat. So that is the thing of intending and planning, that you plan to do something, and whatever one has a tendency towards. And then the other part is the tendency which you have. The tendency which is there is your inclination of the mind. So see, some people, if they are given a choice between a spicy food and a sweet food, will select a sweet food, and some people will select a spicy food. So that would mean that they have a tendency towards spicy things, and one has a tendency towards a sweet thing. So that's just a tendency which a person has, and that becomes the basis of the for the maintenance of consciousness. Is that your consciousness is then there on the food which you are eating, or the movie you are seeing, or the music you are hearing, or the kind of perfume you are smelling, or the kind of any kind of thing you are feeling, like having a fidget toy in the hand, or just daydreaming of something. So then by intending and planning, and because there is a tendency towards certain thing, then that consciousness is engaged in that activity. So the consciousness is always there in the 6 places: the eye, ear, nose, tongue, the tactile feeling, or the thoughts. So the consciousness is there in this area. When there is a basis, there is a support for the establishment of consciousness. When consciousness is established and has come to growth, there is the production of future renewed existence. So consciousness is stuck at certain things and it grows. So one concept is of Madhupindika Sutta 18, Honeyball Sutta, that is the papanca sankhara. That is the mind which goes from one thing to another. So when you are thinking about, say, movies, then it kind of links to another movie and another thing and another, maybe a serial, and that kind of goes on and on. So that becomes growth. Then it becomes the production of future existence. Now, future existence could be you being a certain place, or a certain thought, next thought coming, or certain next birth of any action which is there. And in a longer sense, say if you are kind of attracted to visual things, and visual things are kind of your way of life, then the next destination where you go would be linked to certain things which are visual. So, and if there are, you are kind of linked to hearing, some people are, their life is of listening to things. So now what would happen? The next step would happen when the person has to kind of be reborn. Then it would be something which is linked to his hearing. So that way the renewal of existence happens. When there is the production of future renewed existence, future birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. So when the next birth happens of a action, a birth of action, or a birth of a being happens, then what happens is there is aging and death. So if any you have taken an action, say you have started a movie, then the movie will end at one point of time. Then the other way of looking at it is, say if you have started a meal, then that meal would end. The other way of looking at it is, say you are being born somewhere, then what would happen is the aging and death as a new being which you are born would have a aging and death. There would be sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair. Because whatever you have started a movie, you have started, you liked it, but it ends. Now you have some regret about, oh, it has ended. You have started a good meal, it ends. You have started a good life as a deva, but it has to come to an end at one point of time. So then there is sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair in all such cases. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. So when one plans and intends, that becomes their tendency, and because of that tendency, the birth is happening. If student, one does not intend and one does not plan, but one still has a tendency towards something, this becomes the basis of the maintenance of consciousness. When there is a basis, there is a support for the establishment of consciousness. When consciousness is established and has grown, come to growth, there is the production of future renewed existence. When there is the production of future renewed existence, future birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. So now the Buddha is saying a very important point. If there is no planning, okay, and one is not intending or planning anything, but still there may be a tendency which is there of the mind, that is the habitual tendency or the inclination of the mind is still there or there. So one has not now stopped planning or intending, but still there is a tendency of the mind. When this tendency of the mind is there, it is like the seeds which are laying dormant. When the causes and conditions are right, that seeds can again become plants. And then there is a birth of action once again. That may be action in the current life, or there is a birth in a being. So in this both the cases, the important thing is that whenever you are kind of starting the meditation, you have a lot of mind is going here and there. There is a lot of thoughts are there and all this thing there. You sit and the mind is calmed down. But still in that calm mind, there are certain things which are coming. And that means that there is certain seeds which are there, which are germinating because there is a causes and conditions are right. And then they come up. So the intending has stopped. The planning has stopped. But still there are seeds which are there. The tendency of the mind or the habitual tendencies which are there. Because of that, the birth is there. But at one point of time, that goes. It goes in stages. For a Sotapanna, there are certain things which goes. For a Saddhagami, there are certain things which goes. For a Anagami, there are certain things which goes. And for a Arahant, everything goes. So this is the mind state of an Arahant. But students, when one does not intend, one does not plan, and one does not have a tendency towards anything, no basis exists for the maintenance of consciousness. When there is no basis, there is no support for the establishment of consciousness. So what happens is that there is no tendency. Now, when there is no tendency, what would happen is the next action which is there is not possible, because there is nothing which is pulling a being towards anything. So we are always getting pulled towards certain things. Like if there is too hot, then we want cold. When there is too cold, then we want hot. But the temperature is never right. So when we were there in Leh, I complained about the cold. When I'm in Mumbai, I complained about the heat. So that is a natural thing which is there because we are always going towards certain things. But when the seeds at one point of time will kind of be destroyed, that is the tendencies, habitual tendencies, all habitual tendencies are destroyed. And when there is a cold, we accept the cold. When there is hot, there is accept the hot. So Buddha had a lot of pain and in his last leg of life. In Parinibbana Sutta, it is kind of explained very well that the Buddha used to have back pain. The Buddha fell ill. It was very kind of graphically described that as if two people were kind of tying a string around the Buddha's head and then twisting it. That kind of pain he had. But his mind was not shaken. He had no dukkha. He had physical pain, but he had no dukkha because he did not reject that pain. He did not fight that pain. He did not want it to change. He kind of patiently observed it. So there is no habitual tendencies which are there, which will kind of repel you from the pain or want a change in this situation. So that is a higher state of mind. So there will be no basis exists for the maintenance of consciousness. So the consciousness is not seeking the next stage. When there is no basis, there is no support for the establishment of consciousness. When consciousness is unestablished and does not come to growth, there is no production of future renewed existence. When there is no production of future renewed existence, future birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure, and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. So what has happened is that as an arahant, so there is no intending, there is no planning, and there is no tendency. So there is no inclination of the mind. And then what happens is that there is at one point of time, it naturally the body has a time to go, then the consciousness does not want to go anywhere. So one way of saying is the consciousness does not travel because it does not have something seeking. We are always seeking something. Even a kind of an anagami will be seeking to become an arahant. So that much pain is there. So there are that is explained in I think Majjhima Nikaya 43. Where in the question answers, he says there is a pain where you don't have to siksar. So that is the pain of the kind of a person who is not an arahant, who just wants to become an arahant. He says, oh, this venerable monks have become arahants. One day I also want to. So that also is say seeking is just there, which a anagami can have. But as an arahant, the consciousness is not going anywhere. As an anagami, still there is a seeking of, say, maybe a brahmaloka. That's the reason when the body kind of ceases, the consciousness travels towards the brahmaloka, because that amount of seeking is there, that amount of tendency is there, that amount of inclination of mind is there. That's the reason the consciousness travels. But as an arahant, the consciousness does not travel. So we'll see this same sutta from a different angle. It is the same Samyutta Nikaya 12.40 and the name remains the same, Volition. At Savatthi, students, what one intends and what one plans and whatever one has a tendency towards, this becomes a basis for the maintenance of consciousness. When there is a basis, there is a support for the establishment of consciousness. When consciousness is established and has come to growth, there is inclination. So when your consciousness is established and it grows, means you have papanca, all these thoughts about why it is good, why I like it, why don't I like it. Then the inclination of the mind is there. When there is a inclination, there is coming and going. So when you come or go in terms of actions, in terms of births, means being born and being kind of having death and going somewhere else is there. When there is coming and going, there is passing away and being reborn. When there is passing away and being reborn, future birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure come to be. Such is the origin of this whole mass of suffering. So in the same way, if a student does not intend and does not plan, but still has a tendency towards something, this becomes a basis of the maintenance of consciousness. When there is a basis, there is a support for the establishment of consciousness, and that becomes the inclination. So in one who is an arahant, so students, when one does not intend, one does not plan, and one does not have a tendency towards anything, no basis exists for the maintenance of consciousness. When there is no basis, there is no support for the establishment of consciousness. When consciousness is unestablished and does not come to growth, there is no inclination. So when the consciousness is not established, it is not established in any of the sense basis. So it is not wanting to see, it does not want to hear, it does not want to smell, it does not want to taste, it does not want to touch anything, it does not want to think anything. It has no inclination. That does not mean that an arahant is a kind of a comatose person in a kind of a coma. But whatever the thoughts come, or whatever action it takes, is through the four Brahma Viharas. It is through compassion or metta, or compassion, or mudita, or upekha. That are the reasons for his action. So like the Buddha had compassion for all beings, so he kind of surveyed the in the morning the world and saw, is there somebody who needs help? In one case, he saw Angulimala, who is going to kind of kill his mother. He has already killed 999 people. And when he kills his mother, he would have such a bad karmic consequences that it would be going on for a long time for Angulimala. So Buddha goes and does. So he has a thought that I have to help this person. Then he plans to go there, and he kind of arrives where Angulimala is, and then kind of gives the Angulimala teaching, and the Angulimala's mind changes and he becomes an arahant. But that all requires intending, planning, but those I have no kind of attachment to it. And once Buddha is sitting and he has a thought come, he says, I have a thought that my moms who are there, who are eating just one meal, need something as energy in the evening. So I'll give this amount of food or this amount of things I will allow them to have in the evening. So there was no kind of basis for that in craving or clinging. It was made for the benefit of, the thought came for the benefit of his followers or his students. So in that way, when a arahant has a thought or something, it is not with attachment. It is from the place of Brahma Viharas that action is coming. So in that sense, what would happen is, when there is no inclination, there is no coming and going. When there is no coming and going, there is no passing away and being reborn. When there is no passing away and being reborn, future birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, displeasure and despair cease. Such is the cessation of this whole mass of suffering. So what we do as 1/6 will lead to the state of Nibbana, will lead to a state of being an arahant. That is what the Bhante Vimalramsi used to say, that when you do a 6R, you get a mini Nibbana. There is a, when your mind moves to your hindrance, then there is a tension and tightness. There is a craving which is there. That tension and tightness is created, and you move to a hindrance. Your attention moves. Now, when you recognize, release, relax, then what happens is you have let go of that craving. When you let go of that craving, there has been a certain amount of, very subtle amount of relief which you feel. And that mind which is there at that a very short time is without craving. When you are just relaxed, then you become a smile and come back to your object of meditation. That is a way of giving away craving. Okay, you have a craving as a thought or a distraction. Your attention is, you recognize your attention, you release it. That is, just let it be. Don't fight it. Don't try to suppress it. Don't try to change it. And then bring your attention and relax, smile, and return back to your object of meditation. So now what you have done is you have let go of your attachment. So whatever was intending and planning was there, you have let go of. So what happens is many thoughts are there. Oh, I have to do this, I have to do that, or there's a why did I do this? Why did I do that? Why is this happening? Why is this so much sound or so much heat or so much cold? All this is happening in the mind. When you recognize, you release, relax, re-smile, and return back to your object of meditation. When you are doing that, you are giving up craving. So what at one point of time, what would happen is your mind is calm. Then at that point of time, you can stay with your object of meditation for a long. So there is no planning and intending, but there are still habitual tendencies are there. Then those come, and at one point of time, those also drop away as you kind of progress on the path. So Sotapanna will have dropped away three things. One is that any doubt that this practice will lead him to further progress. He has dropped away that. Second thing he has dropped away is that something happening outside will affect what is happening inside me. That is, Silabata Paramasa is, or rites and rituals will lead to my awakening. So that if I burn something, if I kind of drown something, or I go into a river and do something, I will not become more wise, because what is happening in my mind, I am able to see. So what happens outside over there does not change what is there in my mind, so that he becomes very clear. Then he gives up. Third thing is he has an insight into the impersonal nature of his being. So he sees there is a thought, he 6 hours it. Then again he comes back to his object of mind. Then he says, I am again on the object, on the distraction of that thought. Then he comes back again. Then when he's done that enough, he knows that I don't want to have this thought. I don't plan and I don't intend to go on this distraction, but still my mind is going over there. So there is an inclination of mind to go over there. So he knows that this is impersonal. So at that time, he gains insight into the impersonality. He knows that not being there, something comes into being, and being there, it goes away. So he knows that this is also impersonal. So he has an insight into impersonality. So when he has the insight into impersonality, he has the understanding that there are certain things he can let go, because if it is something which is belonging to us, then it is very difficult for us to let go. So that is the reason those three things he has given up at one point of time. Then when he is a Sakdagami, he has weakened two things. He has weakened lust and he has weakened aversion. Or when he has weakened this aversion and lust, he has given up in certain part those things. He has given a certain part of lust he has given up, certain part of aversion he has given up. When he is an anagami, he has totally given up lust and totally given up the hatred or aversion. So now he has only very fine 5 things. One is that he has a desire to become some thing in a physical realm. He has something desire to become something in the Deva realm, like being in a Brahmaloka. He has restlessness. Then he has a little amount of I-ness, Ditthimana. That is, I am anagami. I know, I have this psychic ability or something like that. That I is there. And then there is ignorance is there. So those finer things which are there, once he gives up those finer things, then he has given up whatever has to be given up. Whatever work he has taken up has been completed. So the Buddha says, this is the time, like you keep away the raft and then you are free. So the teaching or the practice is taken to kind of reach this state, and after that this practice is set aside. But Aaron does not change the way of his life, because he does not need to, because he is now completely in line with the Dhamma or the truth, because he has kind of seen the reality and he has no other kind of cravings. So he stays in the same path without any effort. Initially, we had to do 6 hours to kind of have distractions and let go of distraction. Arhat does not have to do any 6 hours. So this is a sutta which is kind of interesting. I found that this clearly kind of shows that there is rebirth and there is an end of rebirth, which is kind of certain times not clear to many people. I'm not sure why, but Buddha has talked about the past birth, being born and dying and being reborn many times and in many ways. And this sutta makes that clear in both the ways and makes it very clear what is the state of an arahant. So there are a lot of questions which are asked, but Buddha does not answer those questions in that format. Because when those questions are asked in the format that is the Tathagata there after Parinibbana, or if the Tathagata is not there, is Tathagata both there and not there? It is, or the Tathagata is both there and not there. All those kind of philosophical questions Buddha does not answer, because it can confuse the person. So, but he is very clear in this sutta about a state of mind of an arahant, where the intending, planning, and the inclination of mind has gone. So it clarifies a point for me. So that's the reason I just like that sutta and I want to share. And I'll share the suttas which I kind of personally like and I can relate to, you know, because certain concepts are there which kind of, and from the start, when I have started reading suttas, there are many concepts which are getting cleared for me when I read the Buddha, because Buddha is coming from a very clear perspective and gives a very kind of detailed explanation of what he is kind of trying to teach. So that is very helpful for me. And is there any questions?
Yes, I want to have a question. I want to ask you.
Yes.
Bhante,
Yes.
basically, consciousness and name and form reciprocally dependent on each other.
Correct.
If one were to remove the, if one is removed, the other one would fall down.
Correct.
When they are in dependence with upon each other.
Yes, like reeds which are there of two.
And that is why let me complete, Bhante. Let me, what my understanding, I want to clarify with you.
Okay.
The consciousness and the name and form builds up what the world we experience, continuous play of both of them.
Correct.
Next, one way it is called as a karma, the other way it is called as consciousness is one among the factors of conditions. And next,
I could not follow the last thing. Other way is telling us
the conscious cetana is called as a consciousness is one of the factors of conditioning the situation or
Correct.
anything for that matter.
Correct.
In such a dependence on each other, and one will not become or something, it was mentioned that whether the consciousness is unestablished, not coming to growth.
Correct.
What is that growth? What I am unestablished, how I can, I in the sense, one of the noble persons, how he can use his gati, if he wants to control that consciousness.
Correct.
He wanted to change his line. In that case only this happens. That unestablishment factor is the consciousness is unestablished, not coming to growth. For coming to growth, there are 4 factors are required: food and other things, contact, something is there. All the 4.
Okay.
But how come this unestablished and not coming to growth? There only I am somewhat confused.
See, if you have a thought, okay, and you siksar it, that thought does not grow, no. But if you kind of have a thought and you keep thinking on that, that thought will go to another thought. I want to go to a movie. Okay, then I will have to go and get a ticket. Or then I maybe we have to eat something before we go to this thing. And then, okay, we have to, I cannot go alone. Maybe I will call some of my friends. And when you call some of your friends, they will say, oh, we want to see another movie. Then there is another plan. And that keeps on going. But say, if you had a thought, I will go to a movie and say, you siksar that plan and say, no, I'll just do some meditation, or I'll just read a book over here, or I just talk to my kind of family. So then the whole thing which happened about planning and intending and doing all this does not go happen. So your consciousness, whenever is there on a thought, then that thought will grow. But when you have sit-sat it, then that thought has, the consciousness has not grown over there. At one point of time, as an arahant, your consciousness is not moving, your attention is not moving anywhere to any thought unless there is a valid reason for it. Say if you have a thought of say going to this place and teaching them because they are in a lot of pain and you want to go and teach them. So you have a thought, okay, this area people are in a very bad situation, I have to go. So that thought is there and it goes, but there is no kind of craving on that thought. So that that consciousness which is there is not growing. It is not making any plans. Now, if somebody wants to go as an NGO, has to go somewhere to help somebody, then he's making too many plans. He's kind of calling in too many people. He's kind of being busy. You know, people who are kind of do-gooders are not calm people. They are really hyperactive, hyper energy, doing here and there, because that mind which is there, the what is that called, papanca is there, is going on and on and on. So when a arahant is there, this is of an arahant mind. So consciousness is not linked to the eye, it is not linked to the ear, it is not linked to the nose, it is not linked to the taste, it is not linked to the tactile feelings, it is not linked to any thoughts. So that's the reason his consciousness is not established anywhere. At the point of passing away, then it does not have to go anywhere.
So it won't grow.
It won't grow.
So there, then and there it is stopped, and no intention of further growth.
Yes, no intention is there.
Thank you.
Okay. You, how are you? You had a good trip?
Yes. I finally got back home at the equivalent of 4 o'clock in the morning India time. So it was a long day, but that's good. And had a short sleep and feel pretty good, and feel even better for listening to this sutta, because I thought this was an excellent sutta. And what struck me was the first line: what one intends and what one plans. And intends here is cetana. It's if you like intention, it's will in the mind, and it comes from the root chitta, which is the heart mind. So it has an emotional component to it. And what one plans is an activity of mano, the intellectual mind. So what you've got is this alignment of the heart and the intellectual mind. And that's a very potent mix when those two come together, as anyone in a sort of any business will recognize that if you've got the heart and mind aligned, then there's a lot of engagement. And that seems to me what exactly is being described here. They've got that engagement. And then we've got this situation where we're not planning or intending. And then we've got this underlying tendency. And I think that's a very, very useful stage to see. And that kind of comes through when we're meditating, when we settle down a bit and the rest of it. And yet this stuff is still popping up in the mind. And I think that's a very, very useful stage to see that these things are impersonal, but they're not eliminated. And we can calm our mind down. And when we calm our mind down, these underlying tendencies get less and less. But we haven't addressed them, and it's in the process of what you were describing around the stages of development where we actually start to address these underlying tendencies, and that's why these stages of development are only verifiable, I think, personally, or should you be living with someone, because what you're actually looking is to see if these underlying tendencies re-emerge under certain circumstances. And if they do, then, as an individual, we need to reassess where we are, honestly, with that awareness. And there's a lovely sutta, I think you referenced it, I think it's the Honeyball Sutta, where, no, it's the Simile of the Saw, where the maid is living with a high society woman who has a wonderful reputation, and she decides, I wonder what this reputation is based on. And then she starts to fall down on her duties. And as she progressively falls down on her duties, the person she's working for, it gets increasingly more irritated until she finally breaks out into violence. And she destroys her reputation locally in terms of what people thought of her. And what's very interesting is that, you know, it's a sutta about underlying tendencies. If we're in a situation where the underlying tendencies are not being triggered, then we've got a situation where we're not bringing any insight into our behavior. And so, you know, a retreat is a wonderful example of where, particularly, you know, with disciplines like not moving, we see the underlying tendencies coming through thick and fast. And the temptation is to move so that we don't have to face the underlying tendencies. So we become more comfortable again, or the mind settles down. But as Bhante Ven Dhammagavesi used to say, if you move, you don't have a calm mind, you just deleted the mind. It's just become a dull mind. And so this process of going from intending and planning and then to seeing the underlying tendencies and then gradually developing with that awareness is one of the real strengths, I think, of the twin approach, because the underlying tendencies are brought up by the hindrances. And Bhante Ven Dhammagavesi's approach of making friends of the hindrances means that we become, you know, closely aligned with recognizing these underlying tendencies. So I thought these were the three very good suttas. I think you possibly skipped out the one in the middle, but that also basically shows that the dependent origination is triggered by this. The awareness of dependent origination is triggered by seeing this process of intending and planning, and how that and how these things come to growth. So I think, as you said, it gives an insight into the mind of an arahant. But it also gives a wonderful insight into the actual process of meditation as Twin develops it.
And Andy, yes, Andy.
Hey, how are you guys doing? Good to see you.
Yeah, it's good to see you as well.
Well, welcome back home. Yeah, I have a question on the topic while we're on this. So it's very interesting, Bhante, what you said about the motivation of an arahant, how it's based in the Brahma Viharas. What I noticed in these suttas is that there's sort of three different situations where, you know, there's intent, and then there's the underlying tendencies, then there's no intent, there's no underlying tendencies. But I was just curious if it's possible to have an intent or plan while not having underlying tendencies. For example, you know, if an arahant wants to do a big project for the good of the world, for the good of the people, and you know, it's primarily based in the Brahma Viharas, but could there also be something resembling planning and intent, or is that now something else entirely?
I think that as I was explaining, that there can be a planning and intending, but those planning and intending have nothing to do with the personal craving.
Okay.
Past tendencies. So past tendencies are not there. That is, the inclination and the tendencies are not there. So your mind is not kind of leaning towards anything. But this thought which comes up very kind of in a vacuum, and the arahant can say that, okay, I can go there and I will teach them. because it is based on the compassion which is there. Okay, and I'll based on compassion, I'll go and teach them. So I have metta for this person. So I'll maybe give him a lesson now. Like when Buddha is sitting and says, students, I will now teach you this concept, or attend closely and listen to me. So now, without the having a thought, that is not possible. So the Buddha is also one of the some of the suttas. It starts that I had a thought. So that is the example I give. I had a thought that my students which are there have one meal a day, and then some of them have become very weak. So we should allow them to have certain medicinal requisites. And then he kind of prescribed those medicinal requisites. So there was no personal craving in that, or this was not done based. This thought did not come based on the karmic past, the inclination of mind, but it came from in a vacuum, purely as a functional thought. So whatever the arahant or a Buddha does, Buddha is also called an arahant. So whatever an arahant does is through this vacuum, he does what is of good. Like Moggallana, whose last day, he kind of was attacked. And then he escaped 3 times. But he saw that this people will not kind of relent. Then he said, okay, then I am willing to accept what is there. So even that accepting a death is not a big deal for a arahant, because there is no natural tendency to escape, to fight. One person said, we were reading similar just now in Pune. He said, I will fight till the last moment if the bandits come. So that is there, but for Moggallana that was not there. He said, okay, if this is the time, okay, then I have to die in this horrible way of breaking the bones, then so be it. Then he kind of allowed himself to be beaten to death. One other sutta where arahant monk wants to go to a very rough area. Somebody said it was Nalasopara near Mumbai. He wanted to come. So Buddha warned that they are very rough people. They may even kill you. So the Buddha, he said that if they kill me, I will be happy that this body is made of dukkha, you know. So all sensation, in one of the suttas, he says all sensation you can call as a possibility of dukkha. So any sensation you get, there is a possibility of dukkha, because that arises and it passes away. That is impermanent. So then he actually went there and taught, and there were, the commentary says that there were a lot of people who became sotapannas. I think 1,000 people became sotapannas. But eventually he was stabbed. The Buddha had warned him, and he had gone, because then he did not have even the care for his body. That, oh, this body gives me pain, and I will be kind of rid of this body. Which is kind of the receptacle for dukkha. So, for a mind of an arahant, whatever comes is coming from this vacuum, where the intentions are based on, say, compassion, or based on, say, equanimity, based on, say, metta or mudita. So, all those he kind of chooses to do those things, not because it is a personal thing or it's a habitual tendency. He chooses to do because it is in line with the truth or reality of the movement. Okay, does that clarify?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
Sanjay,
Yes.
Whatever the suffering we have, it only depends on the consciousness. That is volition consciousness.
Correct.
But this consciousness of the cessation of this consciousness will be the result of non-suffering.
No, non-suffering will be when there is no establishment of consciousness anywhere, but the consciousness comes when there is a contact. Okay.
That is
So
okay.
the
Four ingredients are required. That is, along with the contact, consciousness comes. But because of consciousness, we are suffering.
Correct. Because consciousness leads to feeling, and Buddha has said that feeling is the kind of the birth of suffering. You can one of those quotes I think the Buddha had given was that you can say that the feeling which is there is the start of all suffering, because feeling is something which goes into I like it, I don't like it, and if I like it is there, then when it changes, it gives you pain. When I don't like it is there, that it instantly gives you pain. Whatever is felt is included within suffering. So this is a sutta quote from this chapter itself. This is the number. It is 12.32. In that, the Buddha says is he's talking to Sariputta about something, and then he says whatever is felt is included within suffering. So what means that when there is a contact, there is a feeling, and when there is feeling, there can be painful. If it is painful, it is suffering immediately. If it is pleasant, when it changes, it becomes painful. So that also becomes the reason for the suffering, because there is a gratification, there is a danger and escape. The gratification is whatever you enjoy. Say if there is a pleasant thing happening, a pleasant wind is blowing, you are enjoying that pleasant wind, the clouds have come in, the temperatures are down. So that is the gratification. The danger is everything is impermanent. So the clouds part, the sun comes out, the wind stops blowing, and then you are feeling, oh, I'm hot and sweaty now. So that is the danger. And then what is the escape? 6R.
6R.
Eightfold part.
So consciousness is deluding us.
Consciousness, we cannot say the consciousness is deluding us, that there is a process where the delusion comes.
Without 6R.
Consciousness.
Without 6R.
Yes.
Consciousness is the factor. Actually, it is deluding us to the suffering. Can I make that statement?
Consciousness is a part of it. So because when we are kind of thinking and thinking is there.
Integral part of our human suffering.
Integral part of that process is consciousness.
Okay, agreed. But that is the main factor, I feel.
Without consciousness, we are not able to kind of have contact. So that is the main character.
That is what the importance
but
is.
But perception given. Is also there. Perception carries
feeling perception.
Past kind of seeds.
Of course. Thank you.
So, is there any question? Are there questions?
Bhante, I had a question.
Yes.
Bhante, while meditating, when we do the 6 hours and we come back to the mind, then what seems to happen is we come back to whatever particular Brahma Vihara that might be present in the mind at that time.
Correct.
And we stay with that, and then that can change and it can move from metta all the way to upekha.
Correct.
So does that mean that we actually don't have much of a say or much control as to which Brahma Vihara to be in?
In a way, no. In a way, yes. In a way, no means when you are doing meditation and we are there with the object of meditation, then we can move in Brahma Viharas, but we are not moving by volition. But at one point of time, you are kind of well versed with this process. when you are well versed with this process, you can put your attention to that feeling, because now you know what is the feeling of metta, you know what is the feeling of karuna, you know what is the feeling of upekha, you know what is the feeling of that is equanimity. So so now what happens is, when you want to go into any of the states, you can just put your attention and go. So one way you can go by attention, but in another way you can say you are not going by attention when you are doing meditation. You are doing just 6 hours. The Brahma Vihara is doing what Brahma Vihara does. Okay, it moves and you move with it. But at one point of time, when your development is there, your memories are there. That's the reason sati has a kind of memory in it. Means remembering how your mind's attention moves from one thing to another. So that sati, which is there, always has a memory. So when you have memory of a state of mind, you can direct your attention towards that at a later stage and be in that state of mind. So one way you can say, yes, you do not kind of control the Brahma Viharas, but in a other way, and when you are accomplished, then you will have certain amount of control. But that is a developed control, which you can develop. Like one incident, Bhante Vimal Ramsi used to say that there was Depa Ma was there, who was an accomplished meditator, and she was considered to be an anagami. And she kind of demonstrated psychic abilities before Bante's own eyes. And he was very clear that she had psychic abilities. So one time what happens was that they had taken her out for the sightseeing and everything. And everybody was very tired. But then at the last moment in the evening, they said, we will take a photograph, a group photograph. If I remember correctly, Bante was there also in that kind of photograph. They all stood up for the photograph, and Deepa Ma was also very tired. She was an old lady. She was a very tiny old lady, a Bengali lady, and she just stood there, and they clicked a photograph. So when they saw she was very tired, and she and her kind of face was very tired, but when they saw develop the photograph, because it took some time at that point of time. So they saw that the Deepa was very smiling, she was looking radiant. Then we said, what happened? You were so tired at that point of time. And when the photo is developed, you look very radiant. So she said that I can go into third jhana at a snap of a finger, you know. So I directed my mind to the third jhana when anybody is trying to take a photo. So my photo at least comes as a smiling face, you know. So she brings up that joy instantly. So that way a person can direct their mind to a Brahma Vihara when he is accomplished. So at one point of time, it will be something which you can intend. And then there is a practice of determinations. Like in many of the suttas, when there is in one sutta, Ananda goes to meet Sariputta and says, what did you do every day, the whole day? He said, I stayed in first jhana. The second day he goes and asks, what did you do today? So I said, I was there in second jhana. And the third day, fourth day, and each day he went successively. He said, I am in the third, fourth, arupa jhana, infinite space, arupa jhana, infinite consciousness, nothingness. So he stayed in a particular jhana for the whole day. That is also a practice. He directs his mind towards that jhana and stays there. So I will not go any higher than. So this jhana, then he can determine and do that. Then this determination practice is also given on Dhamma Sutta website. So as you kind of develop your meditation, you can develop your ability to be in a jhana. But initially, you are correct. You are not intending that jhanas to come or the state of Brahma Vihara to come. It comes on when the causes and conditions are correct. And what is the causes and condition? You taking your mind away from the distraction and bring it on the object of meditation. And that change, and then that creates the causes and conditions for successive different states of jhana that you are not creating or manufacturing. That it appears When your understanding grows to the level of that jhana, then you are in that jhana. Then again, your understanding develops more, and then you are in the second jhana. So as you understand more, you automatically go to the successful state of peace.
Thank you, Bhante.
Yes,
That's
sir.
very clear. I've understood that. I have a quick follow-up question, actually. Can I
Yes,
do
yes.
that?
Yes.
What I have found while not meditating, but still doing the 6 hours, and suppose there's a particular situation of ill will or anger or something of the kind, and then you do the 6 hours, and you come back to the mind with the smile, with the 6 hours. Sometimes it seems you find yourself in a particular Brahma Vihara,
Correct.
which is perfectly appropriate for that situation.
Correct.
And that is not volitional, or at least does not seem volitional, but it's so if I need to have mudita, it comes at that moment. If I need to have karuna, it comes at that moment. And then if I stay with it for a while, then I might go from one to the other towards upekha.
Correct.
So I just thought whether you can comment on this, because it just seems that it happens according to whatever is appropriate.
Yeah. So once Bhante Vivekamji was asked that somebody was going to a place where somebody was ill and was on the deathbed. So they asked Bhante that I am going over there. What should I radiate? Should I radiate metta? Should I radiate karuna, that compassion, or should I radiate upekha? So Bhante said that go there and just radiate. Whatever is appropriate will be coming over there.
Yeah.
If they are very upset, then the upekha will come. If they are kind of sad, then karuna will come. So whatever the situation is there, it will automatically arise as per the situation, because there is a level of understanding which is there in the Brahma Viharas. So that is a situation which is kind of happening with you also, that when there is an appropriate situation, your mind's understanding has kind of developed in that manner that it automatically comes that when you 6 hours, you come back to that state of mind which is required in the present. So that is a kind of very appropriate kind of advice which Bhante gave to that person.
Thank you, Bhante.
So is there any other questions? Okay, then the last words. Hugh, do you want to give us some last words? You're on mute. You are on
You've caught me on the hop there. Just that I like your reference back on the previous sutta, the 1232, I think it was. And I was just quickly skimming that as you were commenting on. And it's this idea, the key thing with the Bhante Vivekam's teaching is this identification of a link between feeling and craving, and how that's where our attention can be, and become sensitive to that, and how initially when we've got intention and planning, you know, we're into the thinking mind, and we're into the investigative mind, and then as we become aware of that and allow that to drop away, then we get into the clinging mind and the craving mind, you know, the story and, yeah, I like it, I don't like it mind. And then we get to this junction between feeling and craving. And this is where the underlying tendencies have their sort of nascent presence. And as our development continues, as our levels of understanding develop, and the background mind, if you like, becomes quieter and quieter, that's what we're becoming more and more sensitive to. And we're sensitive to this feeling. And I'm just trying to find this. So there's this passage just at the end of the first section of 1232, where the Buddha is congratulating Sariputta about his thoughts around feeling. And the Buddha just emphasizes another point. He says, there's another method for explaining in brief that same point. Whatever is felt is included within suffering. And this is very useful. It doesn't mean that all feelings are suffering, but all feeling has that potential. And that's where TWIM is really focusing. It's beginning to get you to be sensitive to this aspect of feeling and craving, the link between these two, and seeing how what happens is entirely dependent upon the underlying tendencies and the way that we react to feeling. And if we can begin to get a handle on the underlying tendencies, and the way to do that is through kindness. This is why the Brahma Viharas, I think, are so helpful. That when we see underlying tendencies spring up, we can have a reaction to that. We can feel that how do we get hold of these things which seem so deep-seated? And the way, as far as I can see, is by exposure. The more you see that process, the more understanding we bring to it. And if we see that process with kindness, then we have a much greater capacity to begin to release away from it. Because anything other than kindness, and we're going to have a subtle separation. If there's any sense of sort of judgment or commentary or comparison or feeling that this isn't appropriate, or we shouldn't, or we oughtn't, or we mustn't, this is subtle suppression. And subtle suppression is something that's very confusing in the practice. And so I just say to everyone, really, don't let it come up. However disappointing underlying tendencies are to witness, they're much better out and in full view for yourself than anywhere else.
Would that mean that when you said look at those with kindness whenever they happen, practically would that mean would it be enough to have an authentic smile at that time as you watch? Would that be the equivalent of that non-judgmental kindness?
The judgmental stuff is when there's tension associated. So you can just work at it from a somatic point of view here. If I have tension around the underlying tendencies, I'm trying to change the truth. If I can be soft and expansive around them, have the mind open, so the 6 R's are a classic example of that process, then I'm prepared to actually see the truth for what it is. And we can only build our practice on seeing the truth.
Understood. Thank you.
Very good. So if there are any other questions, we are open still, or we can share the merits. Okay, then we'll share the merits. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearlessly. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu. Thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you,
And,
Bhante.
we have
Bhante.
next
Thank you.
talk on Wednesday. So we hope everybody also joins us at 7:30.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante. Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you. Bye
you.
now.